Hi, boys and girls. It's time for another story. It's called The Unselfish Act. Little Randy's, who was only 3 years old, had gone with his parents to southern Texas. That's where Grandpa and Grandma lived. I can imagine all the way there. Every so often he would say, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet, Mommy?" Well, finally, they really were there. Randy was so excited. It was 3 days before Christmas. And down in Texas, it was still nice in December. So he and some of the neighbor kids, maybe even his cousins, were already there for Christmas. They started playing tag out in the field. Well, Grandpa, he had lots of people that worked for him on the farm. He had people that came from Mexico, and they came every year and helped him with his crops. Well, those children, they were running and screaming. They were having the best of time. But right in the middle of that field, there was a big barrel, and it was just sitting there. Well, little kids are really curious. So some of the kids, they looked at each other and they said, "Let's see what's under the barrel." So they all got behind it and they started pushing really, really hard. And the barrel, although it was big, it was a 55-gallon barrel, and it was heavy. With a bunch of them pushing, they pushed it over and it fell on its side. And there, under that barrel, was a 16-inch hole. The kids kind of looked down that hole. It was dark down there. They said, "Come on, let's leave it alone. Let's just go play." And they started running again. Well, I think they played a little while with the barrel. It was on its side, so they rolled it away. The kids kept going round and round through the field, and they laughed. "It's your turn. I'm going to catch you." Well, when they turned around to look, little Randy, who was only 3 and wasn't really big, as they looked in shock, little Randy ran right over that hole and disappeared. The kids started screaming, "Help! Help! Help!" And Randy's mommy, she heard them calling, and she came running as fast as she could run. And when she got in the field and she saw the kids standing all the way around that hole, she said, "What is it? Where's Randy? Where's Randy?" And they went, "He fell in the hole." He had just ran right over that hole and disappeared into it. Well, Randy's mommy, she got down on her stomach and she looked down into that hole, but she couldn't see anything. At first, she couldn't hear anything. As she kind of wiggled around over that hole, the little rocks from the field started falling in it, and she could hear them bumping on the side, going down, down, down. That well was 300 feet deep, and it was 68 feet down to where the water was. That's a long ways. Finally, she started screaming into the hole, "Randy! Randy! Randy!" Then she listened, and she could hear a little voice, "Mommy! Mommy!" He was still alive. But down that far into the ground, there's hardly any fresh air. Plus, what was going to hold him up from going down into that 200 and some feet of water? Randy's mommy jumped to her feet and she started screaming, "Help! Help! Somebody help me!" Well, in the next field over, there were 3 Mexican men that were busy working in the field. And when they heard that cry for help, even though none of them could speak English, anybody could tell that there was trouble. And they ran as fast as their as fast as their legs could go. And they got over there and they saw the mother pointing down the hole. "My baby, my baby." Well, Manuel Crowell, he spoke no English, but he knew what had happened. It was easy to tell that a child had fallen down that hole. That pipe was only 16 inches across. That's 1 foot, like your little ruler at school, and another 2 inches. Well, Manuel, he only weighed 125 pounds, and he was only 17 inches across the shoulder. He rushed up to that hole, and he thought to himself, he had 4 little children at home. Would he, oh, he would want somebody to help his child. He yelled to the 2 other men, "Go get a rope." Of course, he said it in Spanish. And they went and they found the longest rope they could find. He said, "Tie it around my legs. Tie it around my feet." And they did. And no sooner did they finish, he said, "When I holler, you pull me up." And he went down head first with his arms out like this, and he squished his shoulders together, and he slid down into that pipe. Well, he had to wiggle and wiggle and wiggle to go down because it was a tight fit, and he was upside down. All the blood was running to his head, and he was dizzy. He knew that he had to get down that hole, and he had to get that little boy out, or both of them would die. He wiggled. Well, when he got down further, the pipe was rusty, and his shirt, and it kept sticking to that rust. It was bumpy like, it wasn't smooth. And the more he wiggled his way down that pipe, the more it ripped off the sleeves of his shirt. It hurt. He pushed and he pushed and he pushed till finally the pipe divided into an upside down Y. You know what a Y looks like? It's like this. But this was an upside down Y. And there were two pipes. One went this way and one went that way. Which pipe should he take? He knew he didn't have long. Either he would die, or the little boy would die, or both of them if he didn't hurry. So he picked one way, and he started wiggling down that Y of the pipe. Above that hole, Randy's mother knelt and prayed, "Oh God, keep him alive." Well, Manuel, oh, he needed some fresh air so bad, but there wasn't any to be had. Then he listened. He listened. He could push his arms out against that side of that rusty pipe. And he just sat there. He didn't move anymore. And he listened. And then he heard the sound of a little child choking and water splashing. Oh, thank you, Lord. He went down the right pipe. He wiggled and he wiggled and he wiggled, but it was totally dark down there. He was blocking any light that might have come down that big, deep hole. He reached out and he felt around and he felt a curly little head. Randy. He reached down and he quietly said, "I've come to help you." In Spanish, of course. But Randy was glad for anybody. "Help! Help!" Well, Manuel, he reached out with his hands that were stuck out this way over his head. They were up this way, but he reached out and he felt, and he put his hands under Randy's armpits. And he yelled, "Pull!"
Ándale, ándale, Dios ayúdanos. Ándale.
"Hurry! Hurry! God help us! Hurry!" And he started. The people up above started pulling on that rope. Well, that's what had to happen. But as they pulled, it skinned the skin off of Manuel's arms because it was pushing him backwards now, backwards up this way from his feet. When it pulled, his shoulders got stuck and it pulled on his arms till it popped the arms right out of the shoulder sockets. Horribly painful, awful. And he dropped little Randy. "No!" And he yelled in Spanish,
Para, para.
"Stop! Stop!" He reached down, and this time he grabbed a hold of Randy's little arms at the wrists, and he held on really tight, and he hollered again,
Ándale, ándale.
"Hurry! Hurry! Hurry!" And they started to pull. It was really tight, and every pull hurt Manuel. Every single pull scraped off his clothes and scraped off his skin. And once he cocked his head, they pulled and they pulled and they pulled. They knew they couldn't stop or he would die. And they pulled him out of that hole, just like you would pull a cork. His body came flying out, and he landed on the sandy ground beside that pipe. Little Randy's mother, she rushed up and she grabbed little Randy. Little Randy was very wet and he was very scared, but he wasn't hurt. But Manuel, he had a big injury on the back of his head. The skin was all rubbed off of his body. He was so glad for air to breathe. And he lived. Well, it wasn't but a couple months later when the people in that town in Texas decided they needed to give a reward to Manuel. Well, when they were pulling him out of that hole, out of that well, some of the men had taken one of their ball caps off their head and they had passed it around. And people had put money into it to give to Manuel to thank him. But when he was laying there on that sand, he stuck up his hands and in Spanish, he said, I did not do it for money. I did it because that's what I would want someone to do to my children, to save my children. The people in the town arranged for a large banquet, and they invited Manuel, and they said he was the guest of honor. They wanted to give him a medal for his bravery and courage. When it was time that he could speak, once again in Spanish, he explained that he did not do it for a medal or for honor, that he willingly realized that he could very well die trying to save that little boy, but he had to do it. Boys and girls, Manuel was very unselfish. He didn't think about his 4 little children at home or his beautiful wife. All he could think about was that poor frightened little child down in that hole and saving him. He didn't think about himself either. Do you know that that's what Jesus did? He was willing to die for you and for me to save us, just like Manuel saved Randy. He didn't do it just on an impulse. He knew what would happen to him, and he was still willing to do it. Boys and girls, I hope that we will remember what Jesus did for us and how unselfish Manuel was to save little Randy. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.